All right, then we'll.
Hard times are always tough, but we're together when things get rough. Trust, honesty, and real walk too. Friendships inside of me and you.
I know there's ups and downs, but here's where my happiness is found.
In this place, you can be so bold. Our home away from home, neither new nor old. Stop and let me give you some advice. You gotta be your best self in this paradise. I feel the daily stress when all I want is to disconnect. I need my other family and the time and space to just be free.
At home, I don't feel much like me, but here make a new reality.
In this place, you can be so bold. Our home away from home, neither new nor old. Stop and let me give you some advice. You gotta be your best self in this paradise. In this place, you can be so bold. Our home away from home, neither new nor old. Stop and let me give you some advice. You gotta be your best self in this paradise. Be your best self in this paradise.
Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Aaron Hadley. I am the director of Camp Ben Frankel and the Jewish Federation of Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri, and Western Kentucky. And tonight we're here on Yom HaShoah with a wonderful panel of speakers as a part of our virtual event series. This series kicked off just last month with a Passover cooking demonstration. And this is the beginning of a series of virtual events that we'll do when we're not busy running camp in the summer. That'll either be a mix of fun events or events around some serious topics like today. A little bit of background about Camp Ben Frankel. Our camp was founded nearly 75 years ago by our Jewish Federation, and it was originally intended to serve Jewish boys and girls from small towns throughout Southern Illinois who were in need of a Jewish community. From those roots, today our camp's vision is that every Jewish child should have a place to belong. And Camp Ben Frankel today focuses on welcoming Jewish children who need a Jewish community. That might mean that these kids maybe come from a small Jewish community. It could mean that they live in a large community and just don't have a connection to a Jewish place. They might be Jews of color. They might be LGBTQ+. They may have disabilities or special needs. They could be from immigrant families or interfaith families, or none of the above. Either way, our goal is to create and provide a welcoming, loving Jewish place. We're proud that after last summer, we were rated the #1 Jewish camp in North America, according to parent satisfaction surveys administered by the Foundation for Jewish Camp. And we strive to make sure kids always have a welcoming, safe Jewish community. Tonight is and represents a partnership of 13 small Jewish federations from across the country, and really represents an opportunity to come together and to provide a resource to people in need of information, of support. So quickly, I just want to give you an idea of the scope here. We've got federations from Florida, the Jewish Federation of Lee and Charlotte County; from Georgia, the Augusta Jewish Federation; from Illinois, the Jewish Federation of Champaign-Urbana; from Indiana, the Jewish Federation of Fort Wayne; from Iowa, Jewish Federation of Quad Cities; from Kansas, the Mid-Kansas Jewish Federation; from Kentucky, the Jewish Federation of the Bluegrass; from Michigan, the Jewish Federation of Grand Rapids; from New York, Jewish Federations of Rockland County and Dutchess County; from Tennessee, the Jewish Federation of Greater Chattanooga; from Texas, the Jewish Federation of Fort Worth and Tarrant County; and our Jewish Federation, which is the Jewish Federation of Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri, and Western Kentucky, because why stick to one state? I promise I'll introduce the panelists here in a moment, but I also just want to mention our next session, May 23rd, Tuesday, May 23rd, our next virtual event will be, is focused on how we can support Jewish LGBTQ+ youth, where we'll have speakers from Keshet and Camp Indigo Point. More about that in a little bit. But let's talk about our panelists. We are honored today to be joined by Renee Birnberg Silberman, Erez Cohen, Jordan Kadosh, and Peter Maer. And let me tell you a little bit about them. Renee is a Chicago native, has been involved in Jewish communal activities since her teen years. She's educated as an attorney, and her mission is to give voice to those who can't speak for themselves. She's a past member of the boards of Solomon Schechter Day School, Ida Crown Jewish Academy, and the Women's Board of the Jewish Federation in Chicago. She's a current member of the board of Shirit HaPleta, Chicago's umbrella organization for Holocaust survivors, and of CJE's Holocaust Community Services Emergency Financial Assistance Committee. She's chair of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum's Children of Survivors Chicago Cohort, as well as a docent and a second-generation speaker at the Illinois Holocaust Museum. Most importantly, Renee knew the woman who saved her mother's life during the war, the unique experience of growing up with a hero at the kitchen table lends layers of humanity and empathy to her presentation. Renee is also joined by Erez Cohen. Erez is the executive director of the Illini Hillel at the University of Illinois. And Erez has been a leading representative of the Jewish community while at on the front of the response to a continued series of anti-Semitic incidents in and around the University of Illinois campus. Erez is born and raised in Tel Aviv, educated at Tel Aviv University, and prior to working at Hillel, his professional experience includes working at a community center in Tel Aviv, volunteering as a project manager in East Africa, and serving as an Israel fellow at UIUC Hillel. Thank you, Erez. We're also joined by Jordan Kadosh. Jordan is the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League's Heartland region, where he leads all the ADL initiatives to fight hate in Missouri, Southern Illinois, and Eastern Kansas. He joined the ADL in 2022 after a decade in the textile recycling industry, where prior to that, he worked as a campaign manager, organizer, and consultant working on races and issues throughout Missouri. We're excited to welcome Jordan. And we're also joined by our moderator, Peter, whom I'll turn it over to here momentarily. But first, let me tell you that Peter is a proud native of Granite City, Illinois. He's an alum of Camp Ben Frankel, and perhaps more importantly, a veteran broadcast journalist. Peter started his radio career at his hometown station, WGNU. He worked at stations in Belleville, Illinois, St. Louis, Nashville, and Atlanta. He's a graduate of Southern Illinois University, where he twice was their commencement speaker and is a member of this university's Hall of Fame. His career centered on covering the White House from the Carter administration to the Obama administration. And prior to his retirement in 2015, he had covered the White House for CBS News Radio for nearly 20 years, where he covered major world summits, political campaigns, elections, and he continues to serve as a CBS News contributor for special coverage. His coverage included the Clinton impeachment trials. He was amongst the reporters and administration staffers evacuated from the White House on September 11th, 2001, where later he and his team were honored for their coverage of those tragic events. And Peter is also the proud grandfather of 3 current campers at Camp Ben Frankel and our moderator this evening. So I'll turn it over to Peter. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Aaron, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for being with us. As you mentioned, it's no coincidence that we're here on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, this 27th day of Nisan on the Hebrew calendar. The anniversary date of the start of major fighting in the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. I know we all agree that every day should be Holocaust Remembrance Day. Every day should be a day that we remember what happened, the millions who died, the valiant survivors, and the heroes who rescued the survivors. Just today, our congregation received a message from our rabbis, David Callender and Vicky Beto. I belong to Olam Tikva here in Fairfax, Virginia, and they wrote, "We remember what happens when hatred and bigotry rear their terrible heads and go unchecked by the entire world." Now, when I was a young boy, I first learned about the Holocaust from a man in my hometown, a Holocaust survivor named Leo Wolf. It's an incredible story that sadly we don't have time to go into tonight, but if you ever go to the St. Louis Holocaust Museum, you will see Leo's story. Leo and his wife, Sarah, both Zikrona Libracha, blessed memory, had a wonderful family. They started a very successful construction business, and they built things all up and down Southern Illinois. When I gave that commencement speech that Aaron so generously mentioned at SIU, at Southern Illinois University, I asked Leo, what advice would you have for these graduates today? And he said, live for today, believe in the American way, do some good deeds, do what you can for humanity, and God will repay you. Just yesterday, I picked up the phone and called Leo's son, Harvey, and I said, you know, I've been wondering, Harvey, what would your dad think of what's going on in the world today, what we're going to discuss with this terrific panel tonight? And without missing a beat, Harvey said that his father would have told all of you that nobody has ever learned the lesson. So when my friend Aaron Hadley contacted me about being part of this program, I jumped at the opportunity to learn some lessons from these 3 wonderful people on this panel. And because I grew up in small town Illinois, I know very well the importance of the Federation, and I know the importance of all the many federations that are joining us from around the country. You are looking right here at 100% of the Jewish population of the graduating class at Granite City High School the year I finished. I was the only one. So I know all about the importance of federations that serve small towns. And I can't say enough about the positive influence of Jewish summer camps. I got warm memories of my days at Camp Ben Frankel. And our 3 grandchildren who go there, Joshua, Levi, and Orly, are campers. And our other granddaughters, Shira and Talia, go to Jewish summer camp near where they live. Now, I could sing a couple of Camp Ben Frankel songs right now from my time there back in 19, but I will spare you. Let's get to the panel. The Anti-Defamation League, of course, leads the way in tracking anti-Jewish hate speech and incidents. And Jordan Kadosh, you had the ADL's Heartland office. Please give us your take, ADL's take, on what's going on right now with this increase in anti-Semitism.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Camp Ben Frankel and the Federation, for having me here, and very much appreciate the opportunity. I guess I would describe the climate of rising anti-Semitism as worrisome. Anti-Semitic attitudes in America is our annual survey of Americans and how they feel towards Jews. We ask them to respond to anti-Semitic statements and decide whether or not they agree or disagree with them. And this past year, 1 in 4 Americans said they believe at least one anti-Jewish trope. 1 in 5 Americans believes 6 or more anti-Jewish tropes when asked. And that statistic, it's nearly doubled over the last 3 years. And we've also learned that this holds true across generations, that these numbers, they hold up for younger people as well. Our most recent audit of anti-Semitic incidents that we publish every year documented 3,697 total anti-Semitic incidents across the country. That's an all-time high, and it's our 3rd spike in the last 4 years. Here in the area covered by the Heartland office, Missouri's incidents doubled. Illinois is more than doubled. And the places that we document these incidents occurring, they happen in public to people who are identifiably Jewish. They happen in residential areas. Jewish institutions are targeted, and increasingly, secular schools is where we see a lot of these incidents. But the news is not all bad, because as we gather this evening on Yom HaShoah, we know that we're able to show a new correlation that people who have basic knowledge of the Holocaust and what happened believe in the fewest number of anti-Jewish tropes. That people who are the least likely to endorse those statements learned about the Holocaust in a scholastic setting in grade school. And so hopefully, as we continue our discussion, we can talk a little bit about what everybody can do to combat these anti-Jewish tropes that we're all faced with. Thanks for having me.
And we will get to that and also talk about the causes, in the opinion of all of our panelists, the causes of what we're seeing. You know, on this Yom HaShoah, we're just so privileged to have you, Renee Birnberg Silberman, with us, the daughter and daughter-in-law of Holocaust survivors. You lead a life of remembrance and action and education of so many. I watched the video of one of your presentations where you described the story of your family as one of resilience, resistance, and luck. You speak to groups all the time, Renee. How do you assess the anti-Semitism that we are seeing today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and including me in this important panel. And thank you to Camp Ben Frankel and all the federations involved. A survivor once said, if somebody tells you that they want to kill you, you have to take them seriously. And I think that's where we're at today. Anti-Semitism has been around for thousands of years. My parents lived through it. All of my grandparents, great-grandparents lived through it, but at different times in history, it was below the surface. And of course, during the Holocaust, it was exacerbated by words and propaganda. And the important thing is that the Holocaust didn't start with gas chambers. It started with words. It started with propaganda. And what we're seeing now is the normalization of the use of hateful words against the Jews, as well as propaganda. In one of our emails, we heard about a story involving Kanye West and that being used to tease or bully a young Jewish student. And the fact of the matter is, Kanye West has more Twitter followers than there are Jews on this planet. So his hate-filled speech can't be excused as the ramblings of somebody who's mentally unstable. We have to look at what he said, take it seriously, take seriously who is endorsing him, who is inviting him to dinner, and then watch out for what will inevitably be the attempt to rehabilitate his image. So I take it very seriously what's going on now in the world, and I really feel for students who are bombarded by all this social media, TikTok, Instagram, etc., telling them that everybody has not only a better life than them, but the people to blame for the bad lives that they have are the Jews. So I, in my speaking to student groups, attempt to show that what you see isn't always the truth, that you have to think critically about what you're seeing and what you're hearing, and that you have to realize that if you stand by while hateful speech is being spewed, the next group of people that might be disparage might be your group, where you're from, your people. So it's important for people to understand that they need to respect each other as human beings, to watch out for each other, and to stand up against hateful speech in general.
I know that everyone watching is so concerned about the upsurge of anti-Semitism on college campuses. And Erez Cohen, you're the director of the Illini Hillel, one of the nation's biggest colleges at U of I. Based on your experiences and talking to other Hillel directors, what can you tell us about the issue at the U of I and other campuses?
Thank you, Peter. I have the unfortunate privilege of sharing with you from the ground level what things look like on college campuses. And what I'm about to describe is not unique to the University of Illinois. College campuses all across America are experiencing an uptick in anti-Semitism. And it's really divided to three groups. Usually the first two are kind of considered to be combined because of historical reasons. But we do separate them a little bit here. One is your good old school anti-Semitism, the one that brings people from smaller communities into a larger campus community, and they meet a Jewish person for the first time in their lives, and they ask, "Where are your horns? I thought you're supposed to have horns." Or is it true that you killed Jesus? These old school anti-Semitic tropes that usually come from religious backgrounds and are still being used and used today in modern settings. In addition to that, we have seen in the past couple of years an increase in ethnic or racist comments against Jews. That includes the use of swastikas, which we all know target Jews as well as other minorities. We have, like many other campuses in the Midwest, white supremacist groups that show up on campus and just spread around flyers. And these flyers would give you different conspiracy theories around Jews, whether they control money or power or have caused the COVID-19 pandemic or are involved both in the Trump administration and the Biden administration in helping Israel out. And this would be the more ethnic brand of things. And we are at the point that the university now has a report about a swastika somewhere on campus at least once a month.
Hmm.
The third and last path of anti-Semitism that we've been seeing growing specifically on our campus over the past 7 years, but we really have seen this for 20 years now on different campuses, is the use of the State of Israel as a way of targeting Jews. And here comes a differentiation that a lot of people pause and say that it's okay to be critical of policies of the State of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. The tropes that we're listening to on campus, that we're hearing on campus, are not targeting Israel. They're targeting Hillel and Chabad, Jewish organizations, because they send people to Israel. So because we send 150 students to Israel every year on Birthright and onwards and the different programs that we do, we are now called racists, colonialists, baby killers, etc. And that's targeting specifically Jewish organizations. Another example that have gone far and beyond what we thought was appropriate on a college campus that have seen what we thought was everything is recently there has been a post on our Reddit page, which, to be clear, posts on social media for students are as real as a sign in the street. And so there was a post that was basically displaying an image that called at the University of Illinois, "We should exterminate all Zionists." Now, we all said that this is Yom HaShoah. The word extermination refers to a very specific time in our Jewish history. And the word Zionists is interchangeable with the word Jews. You think about it twice and you change it, and it sounds just exactly the same. to a person that doesn't know, doesn't understand. So this targeting of Jews is, you represent Israel, you represent whatever the Israeli government chooses to do, you represent whatever happens anywhere in the world that involves Jews. That's a major target, anti-Semitic targeting of Jewish students on our campus and beyond.
Well, Renee and Erez both touched on some of your views of the obvious causes and social media being such a big part of it. Jordan, as you track things with the ADL, briefly, what do you think are some of the major causes of this upsurge that the ADL has found?
Well, we know that the rhetoric fuels the fire. And when we talk about platforms, we're talking about something that accelerates that rhetoric, right? And so the tools that we all use every day, the apps that we all have on the device with the 3 cameras that we take to the bathroom with us and check habitually, right? These tools are also used by extremists, by anti-Semites, by white supremacists. In fact, young people, and I'm not talking about college campus, that's Erez's specialty here, but I'm talking about younger, 13 to 17 young people, a quarter of whom they will encounter white supremacist propaganda on a social media platform. That's the #1 place where they will encounter it. And the next place that you'll find them is in video games, right? These massively multiplayer online games, these chat functions, these chat apps that kids use, that's the next most likely place for kids as young as 10 to encounter white supremacist propaganda and begin to be radicalized and to harass other individuals. And so our Center on Technology and Society, they publish on this every year, called Hate is No Game. And these 2 forms of hate and harassment, they actually outpace in-person harassment. And so we live in a digital world, and those accelerants, those platforms, they're just as useful to extremists and hate groups as they are to people who organize for love and hope and peace, which is what we all wish that they would use. And so, we know that anti-Semitism isn't new. It's as old as the Jewish people, right? But the problem has gotten worse because it's so much easier to do.
I want to go now quickly to the other big theme of the night, and that is how we can instill pride in our children in this difficult time. Starting with you, Renee, how do you think that we can impress the importance of Jewish pride in our kids, and what are the age-appropriate ways to address anti-Semitism, say starting with elementary school and going into high school, because you I think more than almost anyone on the panel, that you address all age groups.
Well, I really start doing my presentations, presenting my 4 stories, my in-laws and my parents, usually around age 11. But last year I did speak to students that were 9 years old. And I only told the story of my mother's survival because she was hidden by a Polish Catholic woman along with 3 other Jews. And I felt that the younger students could understand that concept of good over evil, or doing good in the face of evil, more than trying to understand what happened in the camps or what happened in the ghettos. In my opinion, the best way to start with young students is to know that they have the power to write the narrative, that their lives should not be defined by social media and the messages that they are receiving. Rather, they should create the messages that go out about who the Jews are and what it means to them to be a Jew. So it is definitely instilling in them a sense of Jewish pride, a sense of Jewish empowerment, and letting them know that for thousands of years, the reason the Jewish people have survived is because they have been Jewish. They have acted Jewishly, they have taught their children, and they have done so in the worst of times, but continue to do so because that is our legacy, to carry on our traditions and our history. So I think empowering even the youngest students, the youngest campers, and camp is such a great venue for helping students feel pride in their Judaism and helping them feel empowered in expressing themselves. I think that that's the best way to start to help them to overcome what they are seeing, what they are experiencing. And then hopefully those kids become the leaders in our community.
Maybe leaders at Hillel, right, Erez? Can you briefly talk about your mission on Jewish pride at Hillel at U of I?
Well, you're touching on 2 points at the same time, which is interesting because Hillel at the University of Illinois is actually the first Hillel in the world, and we're celebrating our centennial year this year. And when Hillel started here in 1923, if you wanted to belong to any other social club, you had to be a churchgoer on Sunday. It was part of the basic bylaws that were being used at the time. And so Hillel kind of rose out of the existence of anti-Semitism as a response to a need in the Jewish community. And we still serve this need 100 years later in bringing together Jewish students and giving them the stage and the setting that they can elevate themselves into leadership positions. And unfortunately, still 100 years later, part of it includes responding to anti-Semitism. So the one thing I want to say, and this is, we have often parents, when they come to campus visits and they come to a tour at Hillel, they ask me, how can my child fight anti-Semitism on campus? And I would say the following thing. First and foremost, our role as a community is to make sure that our children don't feel like they're constantly going into battle zones. And the response is, first and foremost, tell your child that they are not there to be the first line of defense of the Jewish people their entire college career. Because if they are, they're going to not enjoy their college career, they're going to basically fight through it, and we're already starting to lose a battle that we don't want to be losing. Because at that point, the student will make a decision. Either I'm not being involved in the Jewish community at all because I don't want to be a soldier, or I will go all in and I'll basically spend my entire college career, instead of gaining and building relationships, fighting against other people. So it's really important because it's part of internalizing an idea that I, as a Jew, need to represent the entirety of the Jewish community. We want you to be a leader. We want you to build networks and make friends, and we want you to speak your truth, but we want you to speak your individual truth. And this is one point that I have to make. But then beyond that, your truth really sets the tone. So you've been to Israel, share your experience from Israel. You went to summer camp, talk about how you experienced summer camp as a Jew. There's nothing stronger than the personal experience when students are interacting with other students.
Jordan, and I've seen this referenced in a number of accounts by students, when a Jewish kid encounters anti-Semitism, I guess every episode is different, of course, and every age is different, but generally, if you can, is it better for them to speak out or just let it go?
First, to make sure that they're safe, right? That the threats are taken seriously, and you need to alert the appropriate authorities if the anti-Semitism is threatening. But as long as your personal safety is intact and you shouldn't be dialing 911, then absolutely you should respond. And it's important not just to speak up against anti-Semitism when you see it or when you experience it, but also to be an ally. ADL's mission for over 100 years has been to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment to all, because we understand that we can't expect other people to speak up for us if we're unwilling to speak up for them. And so it's incredibly important for young people or any of us to speak up for other folks when they are discriminated against, especially when it comes to a bias that's a part of someone's identity. Religion, ethnicity, these are components of our identity. They aren't the totality of who we are. And people can be discriminated against for many reasons. Sometimes it's difficult for us to internalize that it's we're just like everybody else. It's not an exceptionalism. Other people experience discrimination too. And so the same tools that everybody else is able to use against them and allyship with each other, where those are accessible to us as well.
A reminder, if you have any questions, please share them in the chat and we'll get to as many as we can in just a few moments. Aaron Hadley, as you and your incredible staff at Camp Ben Frankel work with the kids for that month during the summer, how do you handle issues of Jewish pride? And do you discuss the reality of anti-Semitism with the kids when they're in a fun setting like camp?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, Jewish identity, Jewish pride, these are cornerstones, foundational elements to what a Jewish summer camp's all about, certainly the experience at Camp Ben Frankel. We start by helping the kids feel safe, helping them feel accepted, loved, and introducing them to peers. Building a network of support, introducing them to brilliant, strong, proud Jewish role models, wonderful camp counselors who have great feelings of Jewish pride and identity. Because there's almost nothing more powerful, more influential to a child than someone just a little bit older to them. And that's part of the secret superpower of summer camp, is that you have counselors who the kids look up to. And so these counselors can set great examples. Their peer network provides support. And of course, at camp, we have the opportunity to really dig into anti-Semitism, to talk about it. We can talk about it with our younger campers and connect dots between bullying. And as Renee had talked about, it starts with the words. We can talk about that and connect dots and how we respond. And then, of course, when we work with our teens and our younger teens and our older teens and the young adults at camp, we can get more advanced with it and really approach it like a curriculum and provide more sophisticated resources to the kids, the teens, and also our staff, our college-aged camp staff are also part of this important cohort, as we've been touching on. All these things contribute.
I don't know about the rest of the panelists and probably a lot of people watching. I wish I could turn back the clock and go back to Camp Ben Frankel after the eloquent statement that you just made. Right now, I want to share the inspirational story of a wonderful teacher in Southern Illinois who's addressing the Holocaust and anti-Semitism with her students at a school where there are absolutely no Jews. Betty Baumgartner, who is not Jewish, teaches in an intermediate school in Collinsville, Illinois, near where I grew up in Madison County, not too far from St. Louis, just across the river, as Jordan knows. She recently witnessed two boys raising their hands in the Nazi salute and shouting Heil Hitler to a third boy, 12-year-old kids. One boy then told her when she went up and told them this had to stop, this one boy said, "Well, Hitler is cool, Mrs. Baumgartner." She seized the moment. She immediately told the kid why Hitler was not cool, and she elaborated on that. And then she took the entire class into the classroom and went on YouTube to find the life story of a Holocaust survivor, so her entire class could see a firsthand account. The kids were stunned as they listened to this woman describe surviving the Shoah after being separated from her family. At that point, Mrs. Baumgartner told me, "I think maybe I better go talk to the principal and make sure it's okay that I continue with this." And the principal and the assistant principal told her, "Absolutely, you have to deal with this." So then she taught her class even more about the horrors of the Holocaust that afternoon. And now she plans to take them to the St. Louis Holocaust Museum, and she is working to find a survivor or a family member of a survivor to come and speak to the entire 6th grade at her class. Now, based on my own upbringing, I assumed that this was a hate incident aimed directly at Jews, something these kids heard at home. But Mrs. Baumgartner told me, no, this was just, I don't want to say just, this was actually a case of sheer ignorance. This was, as our panelists have talked about tonight, the case of at least one of these boys browsing online, finding a dark corner of the internet that portrayed Nazis and Hitler as cool. Now, this class, she describes them as biliterate children from Hispanic families with working parents. And many of these kids themselves have been the victims of prejudice in school and elsewhere, as she put it, because of their dark skin. This was their first lesson in the evils of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. The boys, by the way, expressed remorse before that day was over. The teacher told them that this was the first time and there wouldn't be another time. As far as she was concerned, it would not be tolerated. And so she hopes that she is making a difference, and I told her she is. And she gives me hope. And I want to ask each of you before we go to questions just as quickly as you can, because I'm looking at the clock and I don't want to get in trouble with Aaron here. What gives you hope? Jordan, you mentioned, early on that there are a couple of things that you see that give you hope. What do you think?
We know that people change. We know that people can learn, and we know that these hateful behaviors are learned. And we believe strongly that something that can be learned can be unlearned. People can learn something different. And so when people begin to act on the inherent biases that we all possess, that we can't help ourselves, that are a product of our upbringing, it can lead to hate and discrimination and ultimately to acts of violence, which can be very worrisome. But learning how to acknowledge a bias and be an ally and celebrate not only your own identity, but other people's as well, can counter this hate. Facts win out over lies. We just have to keep screaming them from the rooftops. And it does give me hope that people want to listen and convene and come together in community and establish institutions like Camp Ben Frankel and like Hillel. I mean, these are the home of scholarship and wonderful experiences for everyone growing up. Then as long as it keeps going, I've got lots of hope for the future.
Great, beautiful. Erez, you are the person in constant contact with the next generation of our leaders. What's your source of hope?
Well, you just said it. Our next generation of leaders is a lot stronger than we give them credit for. And what's even better is they know the systems that we haven't even figured out how to use yet. So if we give them the confidence that the knowledge that they have is good, and that what they believe is wrong is indeed wrong, and they can stand up against it, they will lead the way for us in a way that we would never be able to do on our own. So I'm really, all the time, day by day, week by week, I use the help of our students to lead the way. And to end, I gave you all the bad stuff that happened on campus, but our student leaders actually ran a bill through student government just a couple of weeks ago that's passed, where the student government of the University of Illinois stood up and said, we will not stand to see anti-Semitism on our campus, and we call the university administration to do the same by taking action. And they listed 5 action items that they want to see. And next they're taking, and this is all student powered, they're taking it to the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois for approval.
We will follow that. Renee, you have shared your family's story with so many audiences over the years. You've heard and seen a lot when you speak to these groups. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that I hear questions that students ask as a follow-up to the tours I give and to the stories that I tell. And that makes me know that they've heard what I've said and they're interested in hearing more. And my hope is that they will share what they've learned with their family or with other friends who didn't hear me firsthand. And then I see that there are students that come into the Illinois Holocaust Museum as future leaders because they are interested in learning how to advocate for all kinds of groups not just for Jews. And when one group learns to speak up for itself and then to advocate for others, the more groups that do that, the more we will be a country of people who stand up to make this place better and get rid of the apathy that I think many people in our generation began to feel. And that's sad to see. So I'm very hopeful that the young people are standing up for themselves, standing up for each other, and that they want to make a better world for ourselves, for all of
Thank
us.
you. Thank you. I hope everybody watching will give a virtual round of applause to Renee, Jordan, and Erez. You have given us so much to think about and to take back to our communities. Aaron Hadley, thanks again to you and the leaders and staffs of all of the federations who are with us tonight in the Jewish camps. Kol hakavod. Aaron, we're ready for questions for our panel. And I know I ran about 4 minutes over, and you have my permission to go into the next hour because I don't think anybody's going to want to click off at this point.
No problem at all. And we do have some questions, and I'll start with a question posed by Sarah Fay, who, considering that we have a lot of attendees from small Jewish communities, and I'm sure there are people here who can relate to the idea of being the only 100% of the graduating Jewish class of their school. We know that's very common in the population that we serve at our camp and also within our Jewish Federation. The idea of being singled out to be the representative, the representative to non-Jews of the Jews, whether it's to kids or to other communities, what advice can you offer to those of the members here of our community who have to serve as a speaker or a mouthpiece or a teacher, whether it's to youth, children, or young adults as Jews?
So I'm happy to kick us off with this. We have as small communities go, we happen to have a fairly large Jewish community in Champaign-Urbana, and yet our community is very entrenched in different professions, and they're not very vocal about their Jewish identity. And so I have to say that as a young parent and a Jewish leader in the community, I end up taking a lot of leadership both in school and in local papers. I personally, every Jewish holiday, I try to write an op-ed in one of the local papers explaining what the Jewish holiday is. It doesn't take me more than 20, 30, 40 minutes. It doesn't need to be the entire Torah of that holiday, just a simplistic explanation. And often that brings a little bit more understanding about who are Jews, what is the Jewish community, why are they celebrating what they're celebrating, and how to say Happy Hanukkah. And so that's one example. Another is in the schools. If you have children in the schools, please reach out to your teacher, to your principal, say, hey, Purim is coming. Can I come and read a Purim story to the classroom? Can I bring something that will represent my culture? These things make Judaism a little bit more familiar to a lot of the people around us, and it helps to build bridges really with the parents. I'm not telling you make the haters your best friends, but it will create bridges with the parents and the children that are open to receive more information and get to know you better. And from there, you're going to feel a little bit less alone because you're going to get the phone call or the text message or the DM that says, hey, this was really interesting. My kid came back with a dreidel, or I really enjoyed reading in the paper about how to build a sukkah. And those people are going to start becoming your network of support when you need real help, when something really bad happens and you need people around you. They will be your back.
I can relate to the feeling of being the spokesperson for something that I didn't choose to be the spokesperson for. But in my opinion, the strength that I got in representing my frame of reference came from what my parents showed me. And I think that grandparents especially, and parents are so instrumental in showing the young people in their family how to coexist in this world with other people and sharing stories of what they went through and how they dealt with things and how they have friends or acquaintances in different kinds of communities than the Jewish community. I think that's really how we're going to empower young people to feel comfortable being themselves around other people, by knowing that their parents and grandparents had the comfort of doing it despite whatever was working against them. And then they'll go forward and keep kind of spreading that opening up the communities towards each other.
Thank you. I've got another question. Well, a comment was made in the chat, and I think it sparks an interesting question. One of our participants, Abby, mentioned that her daughter was in first grade last year and a substitute teacher told her that Jews killed Jesus. I was chatting with her a little bit. This was a public school. What advice would you give? I would imagine there are parents here who may encounter something similar in a school or may encounter some anti-Semitism. What advice or resources would you suggest that parents could use, or how a parent may respond if they encounter a situation like this themselves?
I'll take that one for starters. First of all, talk to the administration and see if you're going to get support. This is a substitute teacher. It's happened in my childhood. And so this is something that I think a lot of us have experienced, and if you find a supportive administration, you don't have to go much further. But if you're looking for something short to explain the position, a lot of the institutions that are represented here have resources online. You're not alone. You can always reach out to one of our offices here and get help navigating those resources, everything from reports to YouTube videos, right? So that you can share the facts with people who are open to receiving them. And the myth of deicide is one of those anti-Semitic tropes that has been repudiated, but it's just been refuted by the Catholic Church, for instance. They've come out and decreed against it, right? That the Jews, in fact, did not kill Jesus. And so you can actually turn to sources outside of the community to help establish those facts.
Thank you. And thank you. Looking at the clock, just a couple closing things. First of all, and most importantly, thank you, Renee, Jordan, Erez, and Peter, for everything, for all the wisdom and that you've shared with us tonight. And while saying this, I'll click some buttons and share my screen to that effect. Also want to say thank you to the 13 small Jewish federations that partnered to help spread the word about tonight's event. Thank you, and any representatives of those organizations who are here, thank you. I want to mention our next event in this series next month, Tuesday, May 23rd, how to support LGBTQ plus Jewish youth. We have panelists from Keshet for LGBTQ equality and Jewish life, and Camp Indigo Point, a summer camp for LGBTQ plus youth, co-founded by a Camp Ben Frankel alum and Rabbi Daniel Bogart. The Camp Ben Frankel alum, Shir Berkowitz. That event is, like this event, free with the RSVP, and we'll put that link in the chat. And you can encourage you to RSVP now. Of course, we're also a summer camp, and we've mentioned that a couple times. We do have a few spots left for this coming summer, and if you happen to be interested or know someone who is, we're hosting an online virtual information session for Families Thursday, this Thursday, just in a couple days. Or, of course, you can reach out to us on our website, email, etc. Donations help make events like tonight possible. Donations also help provide scholarship to our campers, many of whom are from small Jewish communities. And donations, you can make a donation simply by texting CBF to 44-321. That's CBF to 44-321. And again, thank you to our panelists, and thank you all for joining us tonight. You have a good night. Yom HaShoah. Take care.